I want to talk quarterbacks now. I recently looked up all the quarterbacks the Niners have drafted since 1979, and it's a bad list. I'm going to read it out real quick, and then my question is, why do the Niners have such an abysmal record of drafting quarterbacks? Here's the list, okay? Every quarterback the Niners have drafted since 1979 in chronological order. C.J. Beathard, Jeff Driscoll, B.J. Daniels, Colin Kaepernick, Nate Davis, Alex Smith, Cody Pickett, Ken Dorsey, Brandon Doman, Giovanni Carmazzi, Tim Rattay, Jim Druckenmiller, Elvis Gerback, Darian Hagan, John Pay, Scott Berry, Brian Clark, Joe Adams, Dan Hardwick, and Joe freaking Montana. That's the list of every quarterback the Niners have drafted in the last, 41 years. Why is it so bad? Who wants to take a shot? I mean, Alex Smith, great. Colin Kaepernick, fine. But the totality of that, I would think most franchises would have better lists than that. So what is that? What is that?
It's tough to blame one thing because these are different GMs too that are making these decisions, and so it's tough to blame one thing. They're also different rounds. You've got guys that you just mentioned that were drafted early, Druckenmiller in the first round. You got a guy like Tim Rattay drafted in the 7th round, and so I think Carmazzi and Rattay were actually in the same draft, if I recall.
They were.
Two darts at once. So I wonder if I'm going to go with a theory of why this is happening. Is the 49ers lore of their great quarterbacks, Steve Young, Joe Montana, does that put pressure on a GM to find that next guy? Look at John Elway right now. How long has he been searching for the next John Elway in Denver? And how many times has he struck out and missed on quarterbacks? So I wonder when your franchise has that history and that expectation of excellence at the position, maybe it forces you to make an error in your draft picks.
There might be something to that. I'm sure whatever the answer is multi-pronged and faceted. So it's interesting to name the different things. There's something's going on here. So what do you think, Nick?
There's so many variables. You got 7 rounds, and going back, there was more than 7 rounds. I don't know which year it changed. So there's so many different things you have to weigh out and categorize. So first-round picks, you're looking at Jim Druckenmiller recently and Alex Smith, and then Colin Kaepernick. You really have to lay everything out because you don't draft a 4th round or day 3 guy expecting them to amount to anything. You're throwing darts at the dartboard, just like Tony said. So with this particular answer, there's so many things you have to consider and weigh out. It's tough to pinpoint. But I do also agree with Tony. When you look at the 49ers history of having Y.A. Tittle, John Brody, Joe Montana, Steve Young, there's a lot of story. Tons of pressure and guys that accomplished so much. And there was also a lot of quarterbacks that were the starters for 6 years or more. So when that's the case, you're not always looking to draft someone to be the starter because you already have a guy there. I don't know if you were to take ever since the history of the franchise, how many guys started seasons that weren't named Brody or Y.A. Tittle or Joe Montana, Steve Young. Recently, it's been a high percentage, ever since Jeff Garcia left and Alex Smith. So many variables here.
Point.
I'd say to a degree, a lot of franchises have struggled drafting quarterbacks in the last 20 years. Just think of the Raiders. They've drafted one quarterback, Derek Carr, now in the last 20 years that's really been good. And I think a lot of Raider fans also don't like Derek Carr. He's turned it on this year. But different teams, the Lions, Stafford has been their best quarterback in the last 20 years by far. And so that's a big struggle. But one thing I remember from last year during the title run, the NFC Championship run, is a lot of people complain saying, or I would see on Twitter, and you can take this for what it's worth, but fans would say, well, Garoppolo's no Steve Young, no Joe Montana. Well, they're Hall of Famers. There's only one Joe Montana. There's only one Steve Young. So if your expectations are for every quarterback to be Hall of Famers, then it's really hard to find that. But if your expectations are to find someone like Kaepernick, who it was a solid NFL quarterback for the Niners, or Garoppolo last year, who was a solid quarterback. I know he wasn't this year, but Garoppolo was, or Alex Smith, which I know I'm probably the most down on Alex Smith here, but Alex Smith was a solid quarterback those last couple years with the Niners. So there's expectations to be had, and I think they have definitely struggled, but I think probably 70% of the franchises out there have struggled. Think of the Patriots. They've drafted one quarterback that's been good the last 20 years, and he was, a 6th-rounder? So they haven't even been great at picking top quarterbacks. They picked a lot of guys in the top 4 rounds, Mallett and Stidham and all those guys.
Danny Etling.
Yeah, Etling.
Yeah, I think a big issue is the pressure. I mean, Niner fans have very high standards for quarterbacks. They don't want Alex Smith. They don't want Colin Kaepernick. They don't even want Jimmy Garoppolo. They want Joe Montana 2.0. Even Steve Young was – Niner fans were a little split on Steve Young initially. They have the highest standards, and they will run your ass out of town if you don't meet it. I mean, if you're just Alex Smith, not good enough. And I think – so it's the high standard, but also the high expectations. When you're drafted, no matter what round, 3rd, 4th, 5th, people thinking, oh, it might be the next Joe Montana, and then you fall short. So I think that's part of it. But I think the other part of it is just, if you notice, of all the quarterbacks I've listed, only 2 were first-round picks, Alex Smith and Jim Druckenmiller. If you're constantly drafting 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, 7th round, what are your odds? How likely are you that you're going to get a Hall of Fame quarterback? I think what the Niners can look for is that maybe they've been trying too hard to find the next Joe Montana. They did it in 1979. They got a Hall of Fame quarterback in round 3, and maybe somewhere in the organization they're saying, well, why do we need to draft a quarterback in round 1 when Joe Montana was a 3rd-round pick? Maybe the smart thing to do is to wait. No, don't wait. Don't freaking wait. If you do that this year and you wait till round 3 and you're going to get C.J. Beathard again, you might get a Russell Wilson, but that's the exception. Just draft a guy in round 1 and make sure he's not Jim Druckenmiller. You should be okay. I think that's kind of the issue. They're kind of obsessed with getting that next Joe Montana or getting value at a position where it's really hard to find that. Druckenmiller should have known by the name. Happy Thanksgiving. I would take Alex right now. Can Lance read defenses? Funny how everyone figured out G. Roman again. Happy post-turkey day.